Let's move on.
That's right. We got to talk about that because
Oh, for sure.
Welcome to the Crooked Table Podcast, where we discuss the world of film from a fresh angle. And now your host, Robert Yaniz Jr.
Welcome to the Crooked Table Podcast. This is Rob. On this episode, we're going to be talking about the Jurassic Park franchise, more specifically the latest release, Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom. And to do that, I am joined by Adam Barnard of the Screen Fever YouTube channel and the Home Experience podcast. Adam, welcome to the show.
Hey, Robert. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to get to talk about Jurassic and talk about the new movie, which is just ripe for discussion because of how wild it is, honestly.
Yeah, and I think that's probably something that was lacking in the marketing because they're selling it just like, oh, we're going back to the island, that kind of thing. And there's a lot more to it than that, that of course we'll get into later on. But because even people that are fans of the franchise, as myself, I was a little underwhelmed just with the trailers and everything, just, expecting something more from it. And it does deliver that, whether that's what people want or not, that's another story.
Right, absolutely. I think what I've enjoyed about the two Jurassic World films so far is whether or not you really enjoy them, they're worth discussing. It's not like Transformers where it's like this simple verdict where it's like, oh yeah, it's just loud and noisy or I don't like it. It's kind of like some people either love it or some people think it's just an abomination, and they usually like it and dislike it for the same reasons. They just interpret it differently. So I can't even tell if like the last Jurassic World is a disaster or a masterpiece. I'm still somewhere in between. I can't tell.
Yeah, it depends on the mindset that you have going into it, I think. And this one has, of course, been pulling very similarly divisive reviews that I've seen. I think it's a little more negative this time, but I mean, that could just be the sheer reason that, it's a sequel. That just kind of happens in general with diminishing returns for sequels. But I mean, this franchise has dealt with pretty heady themes from the beginning about playing with God and, nature versus man and all that stuff, and evolution and all of those things, just by the source material that they were working with. So I guess to start out, maybe we'll just delve into a little bit of our backgrounds with the Jurassic Park franchise as a whole,
like our personal experiences.
Yeah,
sure.
So do you want to go first? Go ahead.
I saw Jurassic Park, or the whole first three Jurassic Park films, through a friend when I was very young. I mean, this was like early 2000s, so I was 7, 8 years old, but all three of the movies had come out, Jurassic Park, The Lost World, and Jurassic Park 3. Strangely enough, what I remember the most and what I liked the most out of those movies was Jurassic Park 3. I know that's sacrilegious to say, but like that was the one that kind of stuck in my memory, and I have the most fond memories of like curling up under a blanket in my friend's room while our parents are having dinner downstairs and just crapping our pants and like grabbing each other's arms like, oh my god, because it's just the third Jurassic Park is a straight up monster movie, and it has that kind of campy nature that captures your inner child. It really wasn't until recently, till the return of Jurassic World and Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom and the franchise making a resurgence, that I went back to the original and got a chance to, as an adult, really appreciate how brilliantly it's crafted.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting perspective to come into the film as an adult, because for me, I was 10 when the first movie came out, so I saw it in theaters, I think like opening weekend or soon thereafter. So I was kind of a part of this whole phenomenon from the beginning. And then when The Lost World came out, I read the 2 Michael Crichton books before that. And,
oh, you've read the books? Like when they came out? Or
well, it's like before the movie. It was one of those kind of things. Or right after, one of the two. But I got swept up in the whole phenomenon of it all. So coming to it as an adult for the first time, did you kind of see the films as sort of overhyped, or did you, especially the first one, I guess, did you come to it and be like, well, okay, it's fine, but let's not get all excited, everybody. It's not Spielberg's best work or anything like that.
I'm not sure. I don't think I agree with you in that, what you were saying, how I don't feel like it's his masterpiece. Like it's like if you put this up against like Saving Private Ryan or even like Indiana Jones, it's good. But it doesn't reach as high as some of his other renowned works. It just happens to be a perfectly crafted monster movie with some intellectual debate put in. You know, I mean, some people, that's the one issue I see with the Jurassic franchise. People are so blindly in love with the first one. Like, a lot of comments will be like, oh my God, I hate what they've done with Jurassic World. Like, they've turned into a B movie franchise. I'm like, look, come on. The first one was the definition of a B movie. It just happened to be one of the best B movies ever made. But there's like this denial that somehow Jurassic Park was just like this intellectual think piece. And like,
it's not 2001, everybody.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, this is not a Kubrick film. Like, it's self-actualized what it should be. You know, it was the best version of itself. And that's always how I judge movies. I say, what is this movie trying to do? And for the goals that it set and for the kind of voice that's behind it, is it the best possible version of itself? And if I really believe it is, then I will give it a perfect score, because I think that's the definition of reaching perfection. You've reached your goals. You know, not everything has to be brilliantly intellectual and not everything has to be stupid, dumb fun, but you can have 10 out of 10s in both those camps.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely. No, I 100% agree. And I think the thing with Jurassic Park is that it, like you were saying, it strikes that balance of nailing popcorn entertainment, but it doesn't feel disposable. Like, it feels like it has something to say, but then it, you know, that throws in a chase scene where raptors are chasing little kids around a kitchen, and then the John Williams music, and it's kind of crystallized escapism entertainment in the way that for you know, the previous generation or whatever, in the way that movies like Star Wars have that same kind of impact on people that are children when it's released, or the 89 Batman is another big one for me. Things like that. So I think it's interesting now to see everybody looking back on the Jurassic franchise in the same way that they look back at Star Wars. Yeah. And I'm kind of wondering whether or not Fallen Kingdom will have a little bit of Last Jedi effect, because it does kind of go off the rails a little bit in the second half. And you know, the whole Last Jedi backlash has been kind of insane. So it'll be interesting to see if the Jurassic Park franchise kind of mirrors that a little bit.
Certainly. And like, I do want to double back and get your opinion on some of the other movies, but now that we brought up Fallen Kingdom, what are your opinions on it? Like, if you had to distill it down to just like a short 30-second review.
Well, I feel kind of mixed on the film overall. We should just, for the record, state the premise, I guess. So basically, Bryce Dallas Howard and Chris Pratt come back, and they get recruited into a mission to return to the island to save the dinosaurs from a long dormant volcano that is decided to erupt, in which we've never heard about until now. So that seems kind of like a little bit of a retcon, that there's been this dormant volcano there the whole time. I don't know. I feel like they could have laid the track for that a little bit, but that's not really spoilery. That's in all the marketing. And it really doesn't give away much more than, I guess, not even the first half, maybe the first act or so. So, I mean, I have mixed feelings on the film. I do feel like we differ on this, I know. I do feel like in the second half, it actually gets way more interesting for me. And the first part of the film feels very much like it's cribbing a lot from the previous four in the story elements and in some of the villain decisions and even some of the set pieces here and there. And I think in the second half, it feels like the franchise is finally letting itself grow beyond the constraints of the previous films.
Yeah, absolutely. I see where you're coming from. And like, I appreciate that opinion because it's different than what at least I'm seeing right now. It's kind of like a general verdict from critics. You know, some of their general complaints are what you seem like you're taking away as progress and the more interesting elements within the franchise. So
what about you? What about your sort of general thoughts? And then we'll just delve into full-on spoilers.
Yeah. I liked it. I really did. I have to give it a thumbs up. With reservation, because the second half, I mean, we got to be careful what we use, because like a second act usually just means the middle 60 minutes. In this case, I'm talking about the second half.
It's like very much a midpoint. Yeah,
midpoint to basically to the end. It's so polarizing between awesome and terrible. Like scene by scene, it's like they go down the right track, and I'm like, yes, this is where I want to see the movie go, and then it just halts on the brakes and turns into a monster movie. And everyone's criticizing the writing, but like I feel like I'm one of the only people who are saying, look, the directing isn't really that great either. Like if this is supposed to be a monster movie in the second half, I'm supposed to be scared. I'm supposed to feel stakes. I'm supposed to feel for these characters. That hasn't properly been cultivated. But then there are also some really cool scenes, like the auction itself, or the sticky. I guess we haven't thrown up spoilers yet, have we?
No.
Okay, so I'll make sure to just pull the throttle back a little bit. There are some great sequences in the second act that are just, get out of your seat and cheer, and then there are some where it's like, this makes no goddamn sense. Like, why are you doing that?
Because I guess the auction is sort of in the marketing. I only really watched the first trailer, but it's heavily featured in the marketing. That was a big faux pas. Like they basically showed, they didn't show some of the more spoilery moments or the like dialogue spoiler reveals, which there are some, but man, they took, like, if you broke the movie into 5-minute segments, they took shots from every single one of those segments, even from the last 5 minutes, even from the climax. Well, they literally left no stone unturned in the marketing, and that just Jeff
really
Goldblum
pisses
thing
me off.
is basically the end. A little bit in the beginning of the movie, but that whole "Welcome to Jurassic World" that's the last line of the movie.
Yeah, literally the last shot.
Seriously.
I know.
Yeah, I hate that.
And it was interesting because in Jurassic World, they obviously spoilers here, they really didn't show much from the last 30 minutes. Like, you had no idea there was going to be a T-Rex and Indominus fight on Main Street. Like, that was just purely, and even a lot of the raptor chase, there were a couple shots that were used, but some of the more exciting parts were kept as a surprise. And it's like, and I even remember Colin Trevorrow, who directed the first one, saying he already thought that was too much. He was already unhappy with how the studio marketed it. And he said that publicly, which kind of surprised me. I'm thinking, how much more did the producers have to be pissed now that they just showed everything? They literally didn't leave any stone unturned.
Yeah, and I think that the T-Rex reveal in the last film was one of the best moments of the movie because, everybody has such a strong connection to that character from the original movie, sort of showing. So him kind of showing up to be the hero, I think, in a way, got a great response from when I saw it in theaters 3 years ago. But I think that's one thing about these Jurassic World movies that some critics are kind of balking at, is that the dinosaurs are no longer just monsters. It's like, now we're rooting for the dinosaurs. Like Blue is like a full-on hero of this film in a lot of ways, more so than the last one even.
Yeah, and Jurassic is really one of the few or only franchises that does dinosaurs just in general as centerpieces of the movie. I can't think of another franchise that has that kind of centrality on animals and dinosaurs, like apart from Planet of the Apes maybe, but that's so different in tone. Take for example superhero movies, right? Superhero movies is a modern staple. There are so many Marvel properties and so many DC properties and so many obscure DC properties like Watchmen. You just have whatever superhero movie you want to watch, you can find. If you want to go see dinosaurs done well, Jurassic, like that's your option.
Pretty much.
So I think when these movies come out, like they're the only movies that are fully utilizing technology and kind of like the modern blockbuster scape to tell these kinds of stories. That's not like a Roland Emmerich like 10,000 BC or super, in the past period piece, which those haven't worked out too well. So it's kind of like, I always think these movies are going to draw because they have no competition. They're the only ones in their class at the moment.
Yeah, the only major dinosaur centric franchise I'm thinking of is The Land Before Time.
Right.
and really the first one's the only one anybody remembers from that, and it's a totally different genre. But yeah, no, and dinosaurs are one of those, it's something that fundamentally is just interesting to see. It's just everybody has like a fascination with these creatures, and so to see them brought into a modern context, it's like, who wouldn't want to see that? Even if the films sometimes are, hit or miss a little bit, it's like you still get something out of the experience that you like you said, you're never going to see anywhere else. So do we have any other general thoughts on the franchise or the previous movies before we just jump into spoilers?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to get your take on what you've thought of the other movies, because I realize we jumped ahead. Like, for, say, Lost World, Jurassic Park 3, and Jurassic World, leading up to Fallen Kingdom, we know what Fallen Kingdom's about. We know that we kind of, whether or not it's the best movie ever made, we revere the original and respect its achievement and ushering these kinds of dinosaur or monster movies into more realistic territory. Because I mean, you look, the T-Rex attack on the two Jeeps in the original movie, like that must have blown the doors off the theater, because in the past they've been really crappy stop motion, and now it's like it looks lifelike. And this is the 90s. Like, Avatar hasn't been made yet. Like, we're not used to this hyper realistic fantasy. Like, that was just insane.
Yeah, and that was, I think that first film really nails the balance of animatronics with CG, where they use CG in that film, obviously, but I think I've read somewhere years ago that it's like 15 minutes of CG. There's a lot of animatronics on the close-ups on the dinosaurs, which makes it feel even more tangible. And that's another thing that a lot of people criticize about the more recent ones, is that it's obviously much more heavy on the CG and kind of leaving practical effects behind. Obviously I really like the first one. It's one of those milestone films of my childhood. I like the second one a lot. I think it gets unfairly maligned. Yeah, there are kind of ridiculous elements, like the whole gymnastics scene and things like that. But that scene in the trailer with the T-Rex when that's hanging off the cliff, I think is just a perfectly executed suspense sequence.
Oh, with Julianne Moore on the glass.
Yes, that's amazing. That whole scene is amazing. So I think that I have a little bit of a soft spot for The Lost World, even though it's not my favorite. Jurassic Park 3, we mentioned this, before recording. It's probably my least favorite of the bunch. I revisited it in a long time, so seeing it now as a film critic with more experience under my belt and having seen way more movies might be an interesting experience, just to see if I connect to it a little bit better. I think my big problem with it at the time was that the focus was on this family and these new characters that I didn't really care about. So I felt like every time they were on screen and it wasn't dinosaurs, it just felt like a missed opportunity
William H.
for me.
Macy
and Téa Leoni, that whole thing. And it's like, they're like estranged and they're looking for their son, and they trick Alan Grant into going to the other island because they didn't realize that there were two islands with dinosaurs, I guess. So that story, that's the premise, kind of felt half baked to me. So and Jurassic World, I did enjoy quite a bit. I think it's probably the best sequel that they've had to the original, even though it does have too much leaning on the nostalgia, where this is the Jeep, and here's we finding all these props from the original film, but like The Force Awakens, I think it's the JJ Abrams' approach to Force Awakens was very much, we need to take a step back to take a step forward. I think that Colin Trevorrow was kind of implementing a similar approach to this franchise, which makes sense. And like Star Wars, I was expecting Fallen Kingdom to push it past that, and I think it did. I just think it happens later in the film than I would have preferred. That makes sense. I mean, it's interesting that I've actually come to like what Jurassic World did more than The Force Awakens did. I know that's going to make me a very unpopular person on film Twitter or any online fan haven, but like it doesn't. Force Awakens is very much like beat for beat A New Hope, almost directly. And maybe that's part of what George Lucas ordained with the hero's journey and channeling Joseph Campbell. But like, what I liked about Jurassic World, even if the minutia, even if Colin Trevorrow isn't as experienced of a director as JJ, so everything doesn't flow together as well, I like the direction that he took, because it felt like and more of a step towards the new. It took the Force Awakens approach of retelling a lot of the original, and yes, it did use a lot of nostalgia, but there's some stuff that we just haven't seen whatsoever, like with the Indominus Rex or with a fully functioning park. And, exactly.
And with Force Awakens, it was trying to like go straight back to like recreate the feeling you got with Luke Skywalker, where this was just where Jurassic was just acknowledging the feeling you got with Jurassic Park, but moving it to a completely different chapter of a Jurassic saga.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, and I think especially to the point of the fully functioning theme park. I mean, in the first film, there's literally no one else on that island, just the dinosaurs and a handful of people. And I think that sequence where all hell breaks loose in Jurassic World, the park itself, I think is really, kind of something fans probably wanted to see for about 20 years or so.
Yeah, took a while to get there.
Yeah, exactly. But it's good that they seemingly that the theme park element of it is sort of not really featured in this film anymore because the park is closed. So so let's just move into spoilers, I think, for Fallen Kingdom.
Ready to.
So when the film starts out here, we have Claire working as I guess sort of a dino rights activist kind of thing.
More or less.
That sort of me already kind of rang false. I don't know if I
really.
Yeah, a little bit. It seemed a little off. I'm like, wait, she's doing this now? This is what we're finding her? All right, I guess. I mean, did that feel like a natural extension of her character in the last film to you?
Yes, but I needed more of a bridge to get there. Like, it's very clear in Jurassic World, despite a lot of controversy surrounding her character, that she's someone who looks at dinosaurs through the lens of paperwork and margins and behind a screen in a comfortable air-conditioned control center. The whole idea behind Owen, Chris Pratt's character, is he's the guy who's going face-to-face with dinosaurs in a dirty cage, and like he's the one who gets these animals, and she's the one who makes the shots, but she doesn't have a damn clue the dynamics of what she's doing and the consequence of what she's doing. Like, she's the first person that if Ian Malcolm walked into Jurassic World, the fully functioning park, he would walk straight up to her and go, "You are about to create a disaster." He would just single her out and say, "Stop what you're doing, because this is insanity." It's taking the whole level of trying to control nature even higher and a step up. And in Jurassic World, it's maybe it's not highlighted very well, but like, she gets thrust into a situation where she has to hold a dinosaur while it's dying, where she has to face off with a creation that she authorized, which is the Indominus Rex. So even though the movie doesn't show us, you got to think like this is going to haunt someone if they've really opened Pandora's box. And nearly gotten killed by Pandora's box,
and nearly got her two nephews killed in the last film too. Yeah.
So it's to answer your question, it's logical, but it's such a big jump.
Yeah, see,
and we get very little exposition. It's like, oh, Claire, the environmentalist. If you saw this film, you wouldn't believe that she was the person from Jurassic World because she's just so natural as this new character, essentially.
Yeah, and then Owen's just kind of hanging out, building cabins, I guess.
Right.
So it's retired from raptor wrangling.
There's a great there's a reviewer named Movie Bob, and when I went back to watch his review for Jurassic World, the first one, the 2015 one, and he called Owen like a set of Chuck Norris facts that fused together and became sentient.
Nice.
And I think that's like literally the best description of him, because he's just like he's a caricature, and I kind of like it because it's so funny and it's Chris Pratt and he does it well, but like in either movie, there really isn't much besides what you see in terms of his character. Pretty much,
yeah. Those two characters seem to, for me, they've always been sort of flat. So it's unfortunate that we don't have more dynamic human leads in this franchise, in this trilogy at least. But at least we have Ian Malcolm in here for like a minute of screen time, split between the beginning and the end of the film. What did you think about Jeff Goldblum showing up? And then, to jump to the very beginning of the film, what did you think of that opening, I guess, chase scene or the whole thing underwater? I thought that opening was pretty great. I thought it felt a lot like the opening in the original film where the raptor is trying to break through the gate, or I think. So
I think it's the most engaging because there's a plot element to it of the beginning. Like, they're trying to get the Indominus's bones. It's not like a Mission Impossible sequence or something else where it's like just a sequence for the sake of a cool sequence and then we get into the story.
Right.
Like, the people who are getting the skeleton of the Indominus, it's going to heavily factor into the second half of the movie. And because of that, it blended both style and plot substance. I really do think it's probably the best intro of any of the Jurassic films, the first 10 minutes.
I can see that because, like you said, it does pay off, throughout the plot of the film. It reintroduces you to, remember the Indominus Rex got eaten by that other giant, I don't even know what the name of the
Mosasaurus.
Species. Okay, there you go. The Mosasaurus, and then pulled into, like, and that was the big, like, surprise at the end of the previous film when I think the T-Rex, the Raptor, all kind of had their their moments with the
Such a good
Indominus,
shot.
and then he just took him out there, and it kind of instantly like brings back that memory, like, oh yeah, shit, that's what happened, and he got eaten by that guy and then dragged down there, and there are his bones, and look, that giant dinosaur is still there roaming around, and gets a little bit of a snack in the beginning of this movie.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I thought that was a really well done sequence, and right from the offset, you're already kind of intrigued. You're like, whoa, what are they doing? Why do they want these bones? What's happening?
And it frees the mosasaurs. That's the other thing. Like, and that's not really a plot element. Like, it's in one shot at the end. Like, I was expecting it to do a tiny bit more once it got free, but like, again, one of the things this movie does is it almost acts like more of a prologue to the next Jurassic movie than a story or movie in itself. Yeah. Like, I thought they were going to go and make this movie feel a little more whole, when I'm surprised at how much of a trilogy they're trying to make this, that you have to keep watching. Like, there are some trilogies, like, say, for example, I would argue the original trilogy of Star Wars. You can watch any one of the movies and turn it off and not have to watch the next one to feel fulfilled.
Well, Empire kind of leaves you hanging, though.
Well,
it's always that middle chapter that leaves you there, I guess.
I didn't really feel that way with Empire. I felt like it kind of... I don't know. That's interesting that you say that. I just feel like this is even more like, it feels like a rest stop between the first and the third movie. Yeah. The first movie feels like a full adventure, and the third movie is going to obviously go into some very different territory. And the middle movie is just like the connective tissue. It's not its own.
The bridge film between the beginning and the end. Yeah. Yeah. I think, I mean, for me, it's a little, that part of it's really a little frustrating, because I almost would have preferred this film be about what it sets up the next film to be about. You know what I mean? Right. And then condense some of this down to maybe a first act or something, or even a first half, and then have it split halfway through. I don't know how they would have structured that, really.
I tell you how I would have done it, but it would require a lot of revisionism. Well, if you just cut out Jurassic 2 and 3, like, if there's any way to do that and have Jurassic Park be the first movie, Jurassic World be the second movie, 15 or 20 years later, because, like you said, we got tired of going back to the island. And like, if Fallen Kingdom was the third movie instead of the fifth movie, we would be off the island before we even finished a quote trilogy of Jurassic films. Right now, we're riding on movie number 5 on the island, and like, I know it's doing well internationally, but I wonder, are U.S. crowds just going to be... They're the most cynical of the blockbuster crowd, so they just going to think, look, this is another stupid adventure on the island. Like, I don't want to pay another $15 to go see the same shit that I've seen in the last 4 movies, Right.
And there's a great video essay that I sent to you, actually. I don't know if you got a chance to watch that.
Yeah, not yet, sorry.
I'll link to in this post. That mentions that the big issue with these sequels is that in the first movie they all come to the island. Oh, it's a theme park full of dinosaurs. All hell breaks loose, and then yet every sequel has to come up with some convoluted reason why we're going back to the island. It's a rescue. The second one, we're going to go study them. The third one, he's like deceived into going back. The fourth one, well, it's okay. We figured it out. We opened the park. Everything's fine. And then the fifth one, it's like, no, we got to save them because now apparently there's a volcano. It becomes, it's like just kind of running around in a circle, just writing the same story beats, or, the same narrative thrust over and over. We got to get to the island. Oh shit, there's dinosaurs here. We need to get away. Let's get off the island. And that's been for the last, most of the films thus far. And of course there's wrinkles here and there, but that's kind of been what these films have been about. Dinosaurs on an island. Yeah. It's good that this film seems like they're finally cutting that loose and letting the franchise imagine a little more.
Yeah, I will say this about the first act, which I was weirdly impressed with, that I didn't really think it was going to coalesce so well. There's basically a logical reason for everyone to go to the island and continue the story of Jurassic World. Because when you watch the first movie, it does feel episodic. I mean, or it feels like a standalone adventure. It feels like a great action adventure flick that you don't want to revisit these characters, or because the characters were kind of flat. So you think, okay, we're done. That's great. We'll have to go somewhere else for Jurassic Park 5. What this movie does that's interesting is it brings Claire back, and she needs to be at the island because she basically has full authority to unlock all the security systems, and she cares about the dinosaurs. Yeah. And Owen's the only one who's imprinted on Blue, and the company needs Blue, but they're masquerading as a rescue mission, and that all it brings all the characters together in a way that's logical, like Zia, who's the paleo veterinarian, and Franklin, who's the IT guy. Like, the movie didn't treat its audience as stupid as I think audiences are reacting. Like, it really said, look, these people have a reason to go. There's a reason to continue this Jurassic World story that's not just a cash grab, if that makes sense. Like, that's how I feel, at least. I don't know if everyone else does.
and I think you mentioned this earlier, that Claire has a really sort of a sense of responsibility and guilt for the role that she played in what happened in the last one. That she feels like, all right, well, I need to go there and I need to make this right, and I need to save these creatures, sure, and have them in a safe environment. And it's interesting that in the last film, I feel like a lot of people either loved or hated the fact that Chris Pratt was riding a motorcycle with a bunch of raptors through the jungle, and that he had kind of domesticated them, sort of, for all intents and purposes. And that's, his motorcycle ride is referenced in this movie in kind of a throwaway line, which I thought was kind of funny.
So funny. It's got the biggest laugh from me in the movie. I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah, and then I think Franklin was like, we're not compatible after that. That was pretty great. And I think it's interesting that in this film, so much of the emotional connection is really about Owen's connection with Blue. And I thought it was really sweet. Some of the, flashback, like the videos that we get to see of him raising her when she's little, and then like the way she reacts and demonstrating empathy and things like that. I thought that was an interesting take to really try and humanize one of the dinosaurs in a way for the first time in the franchise.
Yeah, that sequence is probably one of my favorites. Like, I always wanted them to go a bit deeper with the animals. I mean, because Owen is a walking set of Chuck Norris facts. If he's not going to be dynamic himself, he has to participate in dynamic interactions. You know what I'm saying? Like, we have to access something that's emotionally dynamic through him. And in this case, in both movies, I would argue, his relationship and perspective of how to deal with Blue and kind of making a dinosaur seem more human than I've seen any dinosaur in the franchise get. Like, I got really emotional when I saw that scene. Like, it's a video recording of him with the baby raptors, but like when he does the demonstration where with one of the other raptors, he shows vulnerability and lies down, and the raptor attacks him. And then when he does that with Blue comes up and nuzzles him and like wants to see if he's okay. And that also serves as like a plant for later on and understanding more about their relationship. And it's like, that's what I wanted from the sequel. I wanted depth, and there's one complaint with this is that in the second half it's just a monster movie, and I know you like that, but it's like, if I want to see the perfect monster movie, I'm going to go back and watch Jurassic Park. One thing that I know some of the filmmakers promised was that they were going to try to go a bit deeper with the themes, and in some places they did, like with the stuff with Blue, and some of the stuff with Lockwood, and then in other places it's just like, let's have dinosaurs eating people for 20 minutes. And it's like, I mean, I've already seen this. Like, you get what I'm saying. Sorry.
Yeah. No. Go for it. That was fine.
What do you think about how the dinosaurs are cultivated as characters? Like, did that work for you? Was that getting where it needed to go?
I think so, for the most part. I think in this film, like many of the previous ones, the dinosaurs sort of vacillate back and forth between, we're supposed to, wondrous creatures and like bloodthirsty beasts. And I think that, in the first half of the film, I think some of the imagery there, and I even saw a review that I think it was actually on monkeysfightingrobots.com that mentioned that really powerful shot with I think it's a Brachiosaurus in the smoke with the fire. God. That was probably one of the most powerful images from this franchise that sort of captures the tragedy in the fact that we brought these creatures back only for them to die again. And I thought that it, the dinosaurs mostly are a walking metaphor for animal rights and for genetic experimentation and that kind of thing. And I think really Blue is probably the only one that we've ever had as a real character. I mean, a lot of times the raptors have kind of been just interchangeable, and they're just
like
usually
Jurassic
in the
Park
context.
3. Yeah, it was just completely generic raptor squad, essentially.
Right, exactly. So other than Blue now, the only other character that you'd be like, oh, I recognize this person is the T-Rex that, again, shows up to punctuate a scene, basically.
Right. Well, I'll say this. I think both genetic hybrids have characters in that sense, where it's kind of like the Indominus Rex from Jurassic World is kind of like it's sick in the head, like it's demented, but it's also naive. Like it doesn't understand its environment because it's essentially still a baby. You know, it's young in its life and it's not quite fully there. It's meant to be a Frankenstein's monster. You know, it's meant to be an atrocity. That's a spectator sport is what it's becoming. It's like putting the biggest, ugliest animal in a coliseum and letting it fight a gladiator. With the Indoraptor, it's bred for a purpose. This is in the second half, but like the Indoraptor is like purposely screws with people. Like it's evil. It wants to tear you apart for fun. You know, the Indominus was like basically a highly destructive baby.
Yeah, like just get everything out of its way.
Yeah, exactly. And the Indoraptor is more calculated. Like it knows we're jumping into a second half spoiler, but it knows to fake that it's been tranquilized. Like the Indominus, I guess the Indominus did kind of the same thing. Whatever. There goes my point. But you get what I'm saying. Like it's not just
the first one. Yeah, the first one had the Indominus Rex, as you mentioned, was sort of Frankenstein-esque in that not only was it a hybrid, but sort of new to the world, just trying to find its way and doing damage mostly by accident or just to survive. Whereas the Indoraptor is probably the epitome of, in these films thus far, the dinosaurs being weaponized. So it's almost more like a T-1000 with teeth in this film than anything else. Where to the point that they even have it trained, where they set a laser and then they send this signal, an acoustic signal, and then this just charges. So
what did you think of the Indoraptor and kind of what because this is a development of the whole militarized or exploitation of dinosaurs that's cultivated in the first one that, you know, debuted to a very mixed response. So how did this specific iteration of that story resonate or sit with you?
In some ways, it felt like a little bit of a retread to the Indominus Rex again, because we're going back to the hybrid things, dinosaurs. But I think there was kind of no way of getting around that at this point. You had Dr. Henry Wu, B.D. Wong, returning for this one. You had that lingering thread from the last film where he basically took his research and took off. And you needed a reason for them to need Blue. And so getting that raptor DNA so that they could imprint that onto the Indoraptor and, get those distinct genetic traits that are specific to the raptors. Yeah. I think that makes sense. So, if they bring back more hybrid dinosaurs in the next one, then I might be like, all right, that's it.
Well, they discontinue them. Colin Trevorrow said they're done after this one with hybrids. So this is kind of the end of that arc.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that. See, that's okay. Then I'm more okay with it than I was a minute ago.
Yeah.
I mean, because it works in this. You need something. You need a dinosaur to, I guess, make all the other dinosaurs look tame and by comparison. You need something that, since so many of the other animals in this film are supposed to be, we're supposed to empathize for them. You need a character that you just needs to be taken out. That you're like, there's no saving this thing. It shouldn't have even existed to begin with.
Certainly, yeah. And something, speaking of the Indominus versus the Indoraptor, something I liked about this movie, which I haven't seen talked about much, is that it purposely mirrors several beats from the first movie, but in a different context. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, in the beginning of the movie, or in the beginning of Jurassic World, Claire goes to visit Owen to help inspect the Indominus paddock. And, she drives up in her nice car and he's fixing his motorbike. And in Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, she has to go to him to get help on the island, and he's building like a cabin, and she drives up in her fancy car. It's the same thing, but it's like it's in a completely different context.
Right.
At the very end of Fallen Kingdom, we have Blue come up to Owen, and they have to part ways just like they did in the first movie. So I don't think it was like a unconscious retread. Like I think they purposely came back and mirrored those beats in a different setting, to kind of show the progression of the story, maybe. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like,
to show how much, especially like Claire specifically, has changed, maybe. Yeah,
exactly.
She doesn't really run around in high heels very much in this one, so that should make people very happy, because that was the whole big thing last time on film Twitter, at least.
Right. Well, she's grown. This movie, I really got to give credit for making even pretty simple characters have more dynamics or emotional resonance.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like this time, even if the characters were pretty, one-dimensional or two-dimensional, like they were just performed so much better. The comedic timing or the interplay between the two of them like felt more relatable. Like I just feel like Owen and Claire are like that millennial couple that like you want to hang out with at a barbecue, because they're both like really cool, and
Mm-hmm.
he's super charming and fun to be around, and she's super smart and driven, but it's kind of learning not to take herself too seriously. And like there's a great line when they're in jail in Lockwood Manor and being detained, and Eli Mills or not Rafe Spall. Yeah, Rafe Spall's character. He's like, "You're the mother and father of the new era," and I was like, "Oh, he's kind of right. I didn't think about that."
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the first half, as has a lot of. You mentioned this before. It is sort of Lost World inspired in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It's okay. There's this mission. It's going to be perfectly safe. We just need to find the dinosaurs and then get them off. It's all good. Do not engage. I'm sure everything will go fine. And then of course it doesn't. I think in that half, that's also where there's another gyrosphere sequence in there.
Yes, yeah.
There's trying to remember the big set pieces in the first half.
There's a the one where Chris Pratt is
that was
trained.
funny. I thought that was good. I liked that. I thought that was a funny bit of physical comedy from Pratt.
That stressed me out. Like I was tense when I was watching that. I mean, he's going to be okay, but
of course,
Bayona's pretty good at suspense and kind of cultivating. You plant a risk and you give the character some kind of impediment to overcome. Either he can't run fast enough or he's tranquilized. And like, for example, in the first trailer, the very first teaser that came out, it's Chris Pratt busting out of the woods, like running like a lunatic. It doesn't play right in the trailer. It's like everyone was making fun of how he can't run or how he looks like an idiot. And I thought so too. I'm like, God, that's terrible acting. And then when you see the movie, it's like, oh, it's because he's still half tranquilized. Like he doesn't have full control of his limbs or his speech patterns, which was something that I thought was interesting, that the movie gave a reason for Chris Pratt to struggle in a situation he would usually take on with ease.
Right, yeah. And the other thing is, too, you have James Cromwell as Benjamin Lockwood, who seems obviously supposed to be very Hammond-esque. And you have to imagine if Richard Attenborough was still around, he would probably have been in this film instead.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, it's also that deception and that sort of double cross that happens on the island. It's very predictable, and that's my other thing with it, because we've seen this kind of thing before. We've seen the kind of Weasley. Well, he doesn't come across that as first, but the Weasley suit that's ropes them in, and then it ends up having his own agenda and that kind of thing. I think that's part of why the first half of this didn't 100% land for me. Like it was fun, but it's also like it felt overly familiar. And then once that's all over and they kind of hitch a ride, take one of the trucks and barely make it off the island onto the back of the boat, that's when it basically becomes, as I think Trevorrow and Bayona have said, a kind of a haunted house movie, in that there's just dinosaurs running around the mansion and on that estate. And I think it's interesting because at that point, like Franklin and Zia are there, but not really. It becomes much more about what was the character's name? The little girl whose name Maisie.
Oh, Maisie.
Yeah.
Maisie.
Who and that actress hasn't been in anything. I thought she was really good in this film.
It's her debut role. She's going to be a star. Like she has so much, I don't know if it's like charisma, but she has such like you feel so empathetic for her. But there's such like she's so like human and real in her emotions. Like, it reminds me a bit of like how I felt when I first saw Millie Bobby Brown in Stranger Things, where it's like, holy crap, like this person, brings a character to life that could just be obnoxious, but like you feel for them. And Millie Bobby Brown is also, I never even realized how similar that arc was, where they're both like being experimented on. Yeah. And kind of used by nefarious government or private interests. So what did you think of Maisie, not just the performance, but like of the character and her role in the narrative?
For the most part, I think the actress' name is Isabella Sermon. I looked it up, so just make sure we give her a shout out. I think for the most part, I liked what they were doing with her, and just having her sort of while all this crazy stuff was happening on the islands, she's had her own little like detective story going on, where she's trying to find out what Eli is up to, and reporting it back to her grandfather, and then of course not being believed, and the big mystery with the picture in his book there. So I thought for the most part I was really invested in her sort of, I guess, subplot, and I think a lot of that had to do with the performance too. And it's the thing. What happened? What goes on with her? The big reveal with her story later was I didn't feel like that. I don't know. That felt sort of out of nowhere to me, and I felt like one plot wrinkle too much. So is she basically supposed to be a clone? Is that what this is, or?
He reconstructed. First time around it is a bit confusing. His Lockwood's daughter died in a car crash, and he must have preserved some of her DNA and researched and tried a way to clone her, essentially. So that's why in the beginning, like, sometimes the foreshadowing is so fucking heavy-handed. Sorry for the language. Like, that's one thing where I'm like, like, it basically, like, what's the nanny, or not the nanny, whatever, the older lady, caretaker, who's raising Maisie. She's like, you're a spitting image of your mother. It's like, oh, get it? Because it's literal. She's literally the same. And so some of that was a little too, they're showing their cards early. Maybe people, I read the spoiler before I went in, so maybe if you didn't have context and didn't know she was a clone, you wouldn't roll your eyes in the back of your head because of that line, because it would have seemed adorable and sweet. But yeah, she is a kind of a way to preserve Lockwood memories of his own daughter, and breaches some very serious ethics and scientific boundaries that, like, more so than recreating dinosaurs, like when you start recreating humans or reviving humans, it's just kind of messed up. I don't know. And like, I liked that plot element. I didn't like the reveal. That's another issue I had, where I think it's not just the writing, it's the directing. I mean, they're in a hallway and it's just nonchalantly dropped that she's a clone, and there's no reaction shots. There's no, you just turn, I mean, literally after Eli says she's a clone, a dinosaur comes and plows through the hallway, and that's the last anyone addresses that arc verbally. Exactly. It's like,
that's why I was like, wait, she's a clone of the daughter, or she's the daughter's clone? I didn't. Yeah, it felt very unclear in that moment, and then I mean, you realize you understand she's some sort of clone, but it's not well defined or conveyed particularly well. It does give you that great payoff moment when she's actually the one that hits the button and releases the dinosaurs.
I like that. That moment felt right in the context. Like,
well, I mean, that there's going to be another movie, so they're not going to kill every single dinosaur. I mean, presumably they could just rebuild them again because they have the research, the DNA, and Dr. Wu's still running around. So, but I think that did that did feel like a very satisfying moment, even if the reveal of her true nature didn't really work for me. But I
feel like she's going to be back. Fun. Like, she has to play a big part. I hope so. I just can't see them leaving that, just dropping that like a hot potato. I mean, again, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, the second half wanted to be like intellectual, and there were some great scenes. Like, there's a scene between Dr. Wu and Eli where they're kind of fighting over. Wu is the scientist who's in it for a wants to progress genetics kind of like for the good of everyone. Like, I don't think he's a villain. Like, I think he sees his work as like an art, and Eli sees his work as a business, and there's a debate over that.
Yep.
And there's a debate between the auction. Like, there's no reason why you can't have a monster movie where the plot is the focus. Where I get pissed is like when we drop, a great moment where it's like a confrontation. It's like she's a clone. You're expecting to feel the fallout. And as soon as they say that, Bayona flips a switch, and now we're back into a monster movie for 10 minutes that has no dialogue or plot-centric elements. It's like, pick what you want to do. Like, I actually feel like I'm going to have to, I saw the movie twice, and the second time I liked it less because those moments were even more jarring. Like, I'm being negative now, but, the first half to me is near flawless. Like, I just got to say, I didn't say that earlier. Like, yes, it's campy. Yes, it's generic. I don't care. It's just perfectly executed and stitched together for what it's trying to be. Like, the Owen and Claire stuff is fun. They feel like better characters. There's great scenes where, the motorcade drives into Jurassic World and the theme plays, and, Owen and Claire share a look at each other. And it's like, whoa, that's really cool. Like, you feel that these are people, and then a lot of the first half has an Indiana Jones vibe, like a lot of Raiders of the Lost Ark with the truck and all these swashbuckling action choreography. And then so that was just I was just glowing for the first half. And then the second half comes, and again, it's a mix between this is awesome and this is a disaster.
Do you think that it had the switch happened earlier in the film, and then maybe that second half had more room to breathe? Do you think that it would have worked better for you? Was it the fact that they had to compress basically two movies into one? If the island stuff, for example, was just the first half hour, and then the rest of it was on Lockwood Estate, and they had more time to develop the characters, the situations, and not feel like they have to be like boom, 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 and now we're here, and now we're here, and now we're here. Do you think that would have been more satisfying on your end?
Probably not, because I believe that the decision that what my complaints root from a decision to say we're gonna make a monster jump scare movie,
right?
And I just don't support that. I think that's wrong. I liked the auction. I would have liked to see more of the bad guys. Some of the reason people probably have complaints is because we just didn't see them for enough to develop them in some of these situations. I wanted more plot-driven scares. One thing about Jurassic World is that all the elements, all the chase scenes, they happen for a reason, where a character's trying to, Claire's trying to save her nephews, or there's a reason behind all of the set pieces being moved around. The motivations
are clear.
Yeah. Hoskins wants to, sees an opportunity to use the raptors, and, Vincent D'Onofrio's character. This time it's oh, she's a clone. Now let's have a 20-minute chase scene that I guess is fun, but, I just feel like they should have really just gone all in terms of trying to develop the auction, develop the villains, and make this feel a little more believable and a little more of an examination about the significance of what they're doing, and the fact that they're opening Pandora's box for a second time.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I also think the villains are a weak point. I mean, Rafe Spall is a great actor, but I mean, he's got a cookie cutter character here, and not a whole lot to work with. And as you mentioned, Henry Wu is not really a villain, but he's sort of on the villainous side, and he's really kind of underutilized here as well. I feel like he was actually in Jurassic World even more, wasn't he?
Yeah. It was.
He's in two scenes maybe.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I love Wu, and he was one of the most dynamic characters in Fallen Kingdom, and he was only in there for all of 5 minutes or 3 minutes. He should have doubled his screen presence. It would have given more dynamics to what's being accomplished, or what's happening in the kind of the seedy basement of Lockwood Manor.
Yeah, and it's interesting that this film has both B.D. Wong and Jeff Goldblum, both from the original film, both in it for a minute or so. To give it, just I guess to legitimize the movie and be like, see, we are still part of the same continuity. Look, you recognize these people.
I gotta say, jump in and say, I did like Goldblum's appearance. Maybe it's because I got an early warning that he wasn't going to be a main character in the movie, that he just had a cameo. But it's I felt like he was a logical character to bring in at the time. There's a debate about the dinosaurs, and there's no greater expert than the guy who, the chaos theory guy who has the personal experience and has been up close with dinosaurs and been in danger. And his words carry merit within the fictional universe of Jurassic, and that's something where sure, let's hear what he has to say. And other reason why I'm okay with a very limited appearance here, that serves the theme more than being an active, dynamic character, is the fact that I'm almost positive they're going to bring him back for a bigger role in the third one.
Right.
I think they're going to bring a couple new characters. Classic characters back for the last episode. And like, again, there's like the other complaint. This is just setup. Like, I was okay with it because I know it's just a kind of a teaser for what's to come.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I love Jeff Goldblum's appearance here. I just, I always want more of Ian Malcolm whenever he shows up. And it makes sense for him to be there, considering the way that this film ends, especially since he is the character from the very first beginning of the first movie, being like, I don't know, guys, this seems like a terrible idea. We probably shouldn't do this. And here we go 4 movies later, and what he said would happen has happened. And in that way, he's always sort of been the audience surrogate, just being like, oh, like in the Lost World, he's like, ooh, that's how it starts. Then is running and screaming. And so it was great for them to kind of thread that connective tissue in here with him and BD Wong. And so, yeah, I hope that Ian Malcolm will be back in the next one. And it makes sense, like, to your point, that he wouldn't appear in here very much, because there's no way you're getting him on an island anymore with dinosaurs. He got tricked into that twice. But now that the dinosaurs are loose, who knows how they're gonna cross paths, I guess. And
so would you say the ending of this left you excited for Jurassic World 3 or ambivalent about it?
No, it left me excited. I mean, I've seen a lot of critics. I even saw one today on Twitter being like, "Oh, I'm still angry about the ending of Fallen Kingdom." I'm like, "Why? Don't you want something like different? Do you want another park? I don't understand." So, it just felt like it took a long time to get to that point, and I guess that was what more frustrated me.
So I can understand that.
And with your point to the monster movie half of the film, some of it did get a little convoluted. Like, she's running away from the dinosaur, and so she decides to run into her bedroom to hide under the covers, so that basically just so we could have that shot of the claw coming over the bedroom.
Yeah,
that seemed just unrealistic. I mean, and the whole movie's kind of unrealistic in a way, but implausible, and kind of one of those dumb horror movie things where you're like, the call's coming from inside the house, so you go upstairs to the most secluded room in your house. It felt like that kind of thing.
I don't know. I kind of, again, I have such mixed feelings about this, especially now that I've seen it twice. I like so well directed. Wait, I was gonna ask, do you do like ratings? Do you ever rate the movies at the end, or can we do that, or is that
we could totally do that.
I don't know if you've distilled it down to a number yet, but
more or less.
Okay. Yeah.
Before we get to that, I did want to point out that in the second half there was more of the, I guess, kind of campier tongue-in-cheek moments. Like, I did enjoy Blue's sort of jump away from the fire. Like that. It was almost cool. Like a slow motion, like you see in like a Schwarzenegger movie or something, like jumping away. That was fun. And the Indoraptors kind of almost winking at the camera at that one point in the cage there. I thought that was great.
It was messing with him with his tail.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That was amazing. And then he's like smiles, almost looks like he's smiling in that one scene just before he attacks Ted Levine. I thought that was that kind of stuff was really fun. Because your alliance in this movie, but in general with these films, it kind of shifts back and forth between, okay, I'm on the human side, now I'm on the dinosaur side, now I'm on the human side. And I thought that was Bayona played with that really well in this film, especially, having Blue basically be a fully formed character in a way.
Yeah, no, totally. I think that's... Yeah, the winky, everyone kind of like gets mad that it looks like a smile. I'm like, basically it's like it's just opening its mouth to like growl or salivate. Like, I don't think it was... People made it sound like it, did like a Deadpool fourth wall break. It's like, come on, like it was not
It was a little more subtle than that, but yeah.
Yeah.
But it was still, you're watching a Jurassic Park movie. This guy's a villain. He's in a cage with a dinosaur. He's going to get attacked. So you might as well have a little fun with it. So certainly. I thought that was an interesting way to play that, to say the least. So you want to wrap it up and get to normally I do on a scale of 1 to 5 stars, like around there.
Okay.
So where did this end up for you? And I guess within the context of the franchise.
Ooh, I'd say 3.5 out of 5, probably.
Yeah.
It used to be 4 out of 5, and I saw it a second time, and it's like the issues are too big for me to ignore. Like, I really like the filmmakers involved, and I like Jurassic World. I'm like, I like the idea of Jurassic Park franchise, even though it's an unnecessary franchise. It's what I'm going to keep seeing anyways. And it's so much fun, and it's interesting, and even when it's dumb, it's interesting, like even in Jurassic Park 3. But yeah, the second half really could have used some big rewrites and could have used kind of like a different set of goals, instead of just to scare. Like, some of the best horror filmmakers or stuff know that there has to be more stakes than just the scares, and Bayona or even Trevorrow and Connolly and the writers didn't get their ducks in a row before they shot this thing as to how they were going to cultivate that audience involvement and also the fear. So yeah, it's not aging so well. I don't know if it'll fall further on my list. I would probably, in terms of ranking, I'd do like Jurassic Park first. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but Jurassic World second, and then basically both Jurassic Worlds are tied for second and third. So okay. Park, both worlds pretty much tied, and then pretty close behind Jurassic Park 3, and then Lost World is way down the list. I didn't like Lost World at all.
Yeah. I think we're actually pretty close in our ranking and our rating. I'm probably about a 3.5. It's interesting because you and I had sort of similar reactions to the film, but just inverted. Like, I enjoyed the second half more, but I had problems with the first half, and then you loved the first half, and then had issues with the second half mostly. But we ended up about in the same place. I am probably about a 3.5, and also Jurassic Park, Jurassic World. And then I actually like Lost World. Not that I have to see this.
Wait, so
again.
for Jurassic World, are you saying the first Jurassic World is second, or?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the original Jurassic Park, the first Jurassic World, and then I'd have to see this again to see whether I prefer this or Lost World. But it's one of those, and then Jurassic Park 3 at the bottom. But like I said, it's been forever since I've seen that, so it's unfair to kind of rank it with the rest of them in that way. But yeah, so that's where I landed with this. I still think people should see it, especially if they're fans of the franchise. I think there's a lot of fun moments to it, even though it kind of doesn't all work.
For sure. Yeah, it's enjoyable, even if it's not as masterfully stitched together as it should be. And one thing I want to say, if anyone's still listening to us now, is like, I'm really surprised at the kind of critical reaction about how weirdly angry or unhappy so many are. I kind of have a feeling that it's from like pent up irritation with Jurassic World. Like, when Jurassic World came out, it got a pretty good tomato rating, got a great audience score, got a great cinema score. No movie gets to almost 1.7 billion worldwide unless it's actually good or people want to see it. And it had a good multiplier, which means people kept coming back for second rounds, third rounds. They recommended it for their friends. And afterwards, everyone, by the end of the year, people were trying to paint it as a critical failure, saying everyone hated it. No one will be back for the second one. All these kind of like video essays about Claire's high heels pop up, and like, and then like there's a whole thing with Trevorrow, which got everyone frothing at the mouth even more for no real discernible reason besides he's made a mediocre movie or two. And like there's just such anger and going in. And the top critics, I wouldn't apply this to, like the guys who write for the big publications, and a lot of them gave negative reviews, which I was surprised. But like the kind of mid-tier critics who do a lot of online publications, every month they would be tweeting about how much they hate Jurassic World. So if you go into this movie, I can't expect them to have an objective analysis, because they're going in ready to get angry because they hated the last one, they hate the writing, and they hate Bryce Dallas Howard's character. And like, even if you don't like this movie, like, I just don't see a reason to get angry about it, because like it's even the bad parts are so weirdly innocuous.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, and it's I listen to a lot of podcasts and I read a lot of reviews as well, and I've heard a lot of negative critical derision aimed at Jurassic World, and I thought it was relatively, harmless. I mean, that's it retreads some of the previous, the original film and that kind of thing, but like, like Force Awakens, like Creed, 2015 was sort of the year of that.
Yeah.
It's it was intended as kind of a revival film more than it is really a sequel in a lot of ways. And the people just got hung up on the most ridiculous things. Is the idea of sort of weaponizing and like military training the raptors a little goofy? Yeah, so all of it's goofy. A theme park of dinosaurs is goofy. I mean, it's like the whole thing. That's why some of the goofier elements of the second half of this film I enjoyed so much, because it's recognizing that this is all ridiculous. So let's just roll with it, Right. And I think that sometimes that's when Jurassic Park is at its strongest. Of course, with intermittent, like, poignant moments like the brachiosaur, and then the end, which has a lot of impact, especially since Goldblum is delivering that voiceover at the end. But the people harping on the high heels thing, which I was like, okay, so there's a lot of things in movies that don't make sense. Why are you guys have such a hard on for that particular one? I don't understand. And then, or the scene with the nanny, the babysitter of the kids getting like attacked and shaken, I think, from dinosaur to dinosaur and kind of drowned and stuff. People were talking about how that was like, oh, their movie punishes her because she's on the phone a lot. And I'm like, what? Are we? I didn't take that as a scene we were supposed to. A lot of people saying like, "Oh, we're supposed to like revel in the fact that good, she got what's coming to her." I didn't see it that way at all. No. I don't know. People are misreading these sequences. I've heard this several places before. I'm like, what the hell, people? It's supposed to be horrific. You're not supposed to be like,
it raises the stakes for the kids, right? Like, it's like someone they know is brutalized before their eyes, and like she was trying to save them. Like that's something that makes the danger all the more terrifying and real. And sure, it's a little over the top, but like the kind of accusations or the things they've said, it's just really weird. I don't know what the film did. Got put like sand in people's panties or something. Like they got really mad about it.
Yeah, I know. I think part of it could be, and not to bring up Star Wars yet again, but part of it could be because the first film is held on such a pedestal that they're like, what, this is not the Jurassic Park I grew up with. I'm like, well, of course it's not. It's a different film. It's different vision. It's trying to take elements of that and bring it into, today and infuse some new ideas to it. And some of those are not going to work for you, but some of the, don't like write it off whole cloth because it's not the 1993 one. If you want to watch that, it's out there. Go watch it. Don't bitch about how this one isn't, exactly living up to that standard. It's not necessarily a bad movie just because of that.
Well, just quickly to bring up before the end, with The Last Jedi, there's in a different sense than Jurassic World, there's like all these complaints about female characters. Like in Jurassic World, they're like, oh, they were too mean to the female characters or too sexist. And that crowd gets all riled up, like the feminist crowd. And for Last Jedi, like the super conservative, like Meninist crowd gets all riled up. Like, oh my God, lady lesbian with purple hair is super competent and all the men are jerks. And, like all the dumbass, just literally baseless complaints. Like, I didn't like the movie, but I'm not gonna grab my pitchfork because these social justice warrior people. Like it's like you, no matter what you do, some demographic or some group is gonna be mad, and now they have Twitter as like a gathering place. So like it becomes, their complaints become more visible. So like I think it's best just to kind of tune that out, because it's just always some kind of complaint about gender politics or identity politics or on either side, really.
Yeah. Now more than ever, I'd say too. That's the crazy part.
We'll get over it. It'll pass.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens with Jurassic World 3, Jurassic Park 6, whatever they end up calling that. I'm sure it'll be Jurassic World and insert subtitle here, but it'll, and
Jurassic World Extinction.
Maybe. There you go.
What do you want to? Yeah, something like that. Something cool.
I just hope that it gives a sense of finality to at least this trilogy, even though I know Universal has basically, I think, this and Fast and Furious, and those are their big franchises. So if this one and the next one make hundreds of millions of dollars or hit $1 billion or whatever, I think that they're definitely going to want to continue the story in some way, shape, or form. So hopefully, at least with all I'm really hoping for is a conclusion to the Claire and Owen part of this story that they've been telling, and that it doesn't just continue on and on and on and on. Because there's nothing I love more than than a really good trilogy of films where you feel a progression from one step to the next and an actual ending. Not that it's just, well, and maybe another one. We'll see what happens. So that's what I'm hoping for with the next one. It'll be interesting to see where they take it now that the dinosaurs are literally roaming free. And, you know, the mosasaur it's swimming in the ocean there is really creepy. So there's a lot of potential is my point. So excited to see that.
Yeah, I'm glad we kind of both enjoyed it and felt similarly about it. Like, I feel like I'm glad that we were able to discuss some of the in-between and not result to extremes because, again, like, I think there's a lot of issues, but there's also a lot of good, and to harp on one just kind of gets exhausting because it's worth recognizing that there is nuance and not everything has to be amazing or horrible. You know, there is some kind of compromise that you can come to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we could use more of that kind of understanding communication about movies online instead of like you say one negative thing and like, oh, it's the worst thing ever, or the best thing is like, hey, let's meet in the middle. Art is subjective.
Certainly.
You know.
Certainly.
So I guess that's all we have for now. If you like what we're doing here on the Crooked Table Podcast, please consider contributing to our Patreon page at patreon.com/Crooked Table. You can also rate and review the show on iTunes to help others find us. You can find me, Robert Yaniz Jr., on Twitter at Crooked Table. Adam, where can people find you online?
At Adam Barnard, like Bnard. Just take out the AR in my name. So yeah, I'm on Twitter and Instagram there, and also Screen Fever, which is on YouTube, or at Real Screen Fever on Twitter.
Yeah, definitely check that out on Screen Fever and YouTube. Adam and I actually did a couple of discussions together, and there's a lot of stuff to talk about lately, though. That's the fun part of this. It's just every day there's another crazy entertainment news story it's exciting to connect to talk about that. So, of course, you can find more podcasts, reviews, videos, and other movie-related goodies at crookedtable.com. We'll be back next week with another episode. Until then, I've been Rob. Adam, thanks so much for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was super fun, and I'm glad we got to discuss this movie because I've been looking forward to it for quite some time.
Excellent. So we'll catch you around the table next week. Roll credits.
This has been a production of crookedtable.com. All rights reserved.
CROOKED.